Welcome to my channel where we help you read the markets by simplifying technical analysis. Now, Bitcoin's been on a wild ride. It's made a massive move to the upside, but it's very likely we're going to see it plummet towards $20,000 over the next 2 months, 60 days, and therefore the weeks to come. So if you like today's video, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Let's dive into a live chart with Bitcoin and break it down really in 4 simple steps. So looking at Bitcoin, this is its chart. So I've just hidden the price data. It's just, the price data looks like this. I've just drawn something called Elliott waves. I've done some Fibonacci price and Fibonacci time. And we're also going to look at momentum. And we're going to really just simplify what looks very complicated. Now you want to just remember, if you haven't heard me before, markets are driven by fear and greed. It's crowd psychology playing out, and it's why Elliott wave theory and Fibonacci ratios works incredibly well, especially when you combine it. And that allows us to read the markets on what's very likely to occur next, even before it happens. And that can help us make money from the markets. So let me just hide this data. We're going to pay attention to the red lines initially. So what I want to just remind you is markets tend to move in 5s and 3s, and we've got this very beautiful 5-wave move to the upside. Textbook, in fact. But what we see over here, this last part, we call it a wave 5. And wave 5s has a particular relationship to wave 3s, to wave 1s, and to wave 4s. And what I want you to be aware of is this over here, this pink box that I drew over here, is a typical wave 5 price zone after we've seen the market respond like this. But what we had with Bitcoin was an overextension. And this is classic of panic buying. Short-term panic buying, normally based on news, normally based on global events, panic buying. And what we're due, literally, we're due, like a train is due to arrive, we are due for a correction. And after a 5-wave move to the upside, what typically occurs is some type of 3-wave correction. And that's one of the big reasons why we're anticipating a move to the downside. Now, does it mean it's 100% going to happen? Absolutely not. We don't have that control over the market. All we can do is see what's very highly likely. So that's from an Elliott wave position. But now let's look at Fibonacci price. After a 5-wave move that we draw now over here, remember this is a live price data. I've just simplified it for us so we can just break it down in simple terms, is we tend to get at least a 50% retracement in price. And the way you want to think about it, how I think about it, I got a degree in mathematics, but also sports science. And with athletes, after they've done a big sprint, there's a lot of lactic acid in the body, and they need a rest period to recover. And the markets are the same. It's like it's done a nice big sprint to the upside, and it's taken a lot of energy, a lot of money, and now it needs a rest period. It needs a recovery period, and normally it's a minimum of 50%. So with Bitcoin, and this applies to all markets, all time frames, it's likely we're at least going to see it retest the 21,600 level, and even as low as the 20,000 and below level. This is the typical price zone between here and here for a correction. So we've got 2 elements now we're looking at. We're looking at Fibonacci price and we're looking at Elliott waves. I'm going to talk a little bit about Fibonacci time. But before I do, make sure you're taking advantage of my free Bitcoin membership area. It's a Bitcoin report. We do around a weekly report, just the latest information on Bitcoin when there's relevant changes. And it's a free membership area. You get a lot of value over here. It's in the link below. Very, very special. And again, once a week is what I normally do. But it's more timely. It's when something is happening that we want to be aware of, so you don't have to wait for one of these kind of videos. So what we're going to look at now is time, right? This is a bit advanced, but I think you should be aware of it, is when there's a move to the upside and it takes a certain amount of time, the correction typically also takes a certain amount of time. And there's 2 particular dates in mind that I just want to I got in my diary, is if we do get a move to the downside in 3 waves, which is most common, doesn't mean it's going to happen, it's just very likely to happen, it should occur within this pink box zone over here. And the dates that I have is towards the end of April So we're talking about 4 or 5 weeks and possibly even towards the end of May. So we're talking about maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of sideways to down and seeing that correction. And that's what we have with Bitcoin. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some momentum indicators now with Bitcoin just to help us navigate this space, which can be quite complex. I love using something called the stochastics RSI. It's this blue and red line down here. Now, all it does is help me measure the rate of change. So let me just pull up the price data again. And let's just quickly look how valuable it's been to us in the past. Now, remember, we want to combine these things. It's called a confluence of events: pattern, price, time, and momentum. But we want to simplify it so it's practical, so we can make money, not get overly emotional, and just be objective with our decision making. So here you see the blue line went below the red, and it married up nicely with this top over here. The blue line went above or below the red, and it married up in this zone. Like, this is where the crossover occurred, but the high over here occurred, a few days later. The blue line went below the red, and it correlated very nicely with what we're calling a wave 3 top over here. And guess what? The blue line has gone below the red. So what does that tell us? Well, this is lagging information, by the way. It's based on history, so it's not perfect, but it gives us a big clue on where the rate of change is, and it would often correlate with price tops. So now what we have is we have something called Fibonacci price. We've got a price zone. This is a typical maximum, a maximum extreme of a wave 5. We've got a pattern, which looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave count. So that's two things. We've got this momentum indicator, the blue line going below the red, which is the third thing. So now it tells us we are likely to see some type of pullback. Now, there are a couple of cases, if you watch my recent content, that I've really pulled out 2 scenarios. Today, I'm leaning on the second scenario of a deeper correction. But the key things is if you're in profit, especially with the low caps that have, some of them have pumped quite nicely, is to make sure you're locking in profits, because we are due a correction. I like to think of it as a train that's running late. And if it's running late and it's due for 11 a.m. and it's 10 past 11, well, guess what? The train is due, and we are due a correction when it comes to Bitcoin. By the way, if you see this, I'm going to show you this actually. Let me just show you this. Something I created called the Trend Identifier Dashboard. It just helps us simplify this information, and you can get buy and sell signals in it, and it helps us just read the markets like a pro. I would highly recommend it. You can test it out for £1 now for a 30-day trial. It's in the link below. I give a full training. I've actually just done some updated training which shows you how to set alerts. So when you get these key momentum reversal changes, you get an email notification to then look at your chart to see if there's an action that you should be taking. So if you like today's video, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Let's finish today on a quote. It's the quote that I had up at the beginning. It's Einstein, and he said this: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So it's good practice to see if you can explain something that's relatively complex. Like, elite waves can be complex. Most people overcomplicate it. Fibonacci price ratios can be quite complex because people just use the basic retracement tool, but there are some very key tools that can be very helpful for us. And if you can practice it and even practice explaining it, it can make a vital difference to how you're going to use the tools itself. So like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, share this video. Let me know what you think. Do you think Bitcoin is going to continue to the upside, or are we due that correction, and are we going to get that correction?